So, welcome to everyone. Before we start, I would like to outline the usual housekeeping arrangements. If you wish to speak, please indicate that you wish to do so to the chair or the vice chair. Please can you stand when addressing the council? To enable your microphone, please press the middle button, which will turn green, and the microphone will light up red at the top. Please also remember to press the middle button when you have finished speaking. It is particularly important that all members use their microphones so that the audio can be picked up for the live stream. In the event of a fire alarm sounding during the meeting, please stand and follow the meeting administrator to the fire evacuation point outside the building. I would also like to remind you that this meeting is being live streamed on the Council's YouTube channel. I would like to politely remind all members that due to the nature of the Council's camera and microphone tracking systems, it is possible that you may appear on camera at times even when you may not necessarily be addressing the Council. For example, when the cameras are panning across the room or a colleague in your vicinity is speaking. Please be mindful of this at all times and act appropriately, including with your use of mobile phones, so please make sure they're silenced. I would also like to remind members that for those items which require a decision and a vote to be taken at their conclusion, members must remain in the meeting for the entire discussion and debate. If a member is not present for the whole of an item of business, they will not be able to vote on that item. Thank you. Do we have any apologies?
Yes, we had apologies from Councillors Alban, Brereton, Corney, Gledo, Hassel, Jennings, Jordan, and we've got apologies for lateness from Councillor Hodgson-Jones as well.
Thank you. Will members please stay seated for a prayer to be offered by the Reverend James Bamber, Minister of Huntingdon Methodist Church.
Stay seated or everyone standing?
Stay seated.
So members of council, I thank you for your invitation to share with you just briefly this evening. I want to introduce you to two characters that I have cause to reflect upon from time to time as I go about my ministry. Philomena and Eustace were very talented catering assistants in a local restaurant. So much so that when the local council visited, the owner of that establishment made sure that they were both on duty on the same evening, something that hadn't happened before, because you see, each believed that they were the best at their job. The evening arrived, and in the narrow passageway that led from the kitchen to the dining area, Philomena and Eustace stood together poised. Those in charge arrived and took their seats. They'd consulted the menus, and they waited, and they waited, and they waited. Nobody appeared to take their orders because, you see, there was a battle going on. Both couldn't pass down the narrow passage at the same time, and neither would give way to the other. It meant that the owner lost out, and so too did Philomena and Eustace. And as I reflect on those characters, I reflect on how in culture, when power and pride prevail, then everyone ultimately loses. So let us pray. Holy God, thank you for those who have responded to your call to serve on this council, who listen and hear, and in hearing act. help them to continue to lay aside self and personal agendas for the good of all. As a council in this area, help us to continue to offer ourselves in the way of service, that continuing to work with others, we might become more fully what you have called us to be, serving with fairness, advocating inclusively, seeking the flourishing of all. Direct our business as we entrust to you this evening and all who will be impacted by the decisions that are made. Amen.
Thank you, Reverend James Bamber. Will you please turn to item 2 on your agenda, being the minutes? Is everyone agreed that I sign the minutes of the annual meeting held of the Council on the 22nd of May this year, 2024, as a correct record? All right. Thank you. I will sign the minutes. Thank you. Just there. Turning to item number 3 on the agenda, members' interests. Are there any interests that members would like to declare in relation to any agenda this evening? Any items on the agenda this evening? No, thank you. Okay, item number 4, Chair's engagements and announcements. Before I turn to my engagements, I would just like to take the opportunity to enable members to pay their respects to Councillor Graham Welton, who members will be aware sadly and tragically passed away in June. Graham was relatively new to the District Council, first elected in May 2022 and represented the St Neots Eatons ward. During his time as councillor, he was member of both overview and scrutiny panels, environment, communities and partnerships, and the performance and growth. Originally a bus driver, Graham latterly made his home in Eaton Ford, where he also represented St Neots Town Council. He will be missed by family, friends and colleagues. Do we have any members who would wish to pay tribute, please? Councillor Martin.
Thank you very much, Chair. And first off, it was a huge surprise when we heard the news of Graham's passing. It was very sudden, and our thoughts, I'm sure across the whole council, go to his friends and his family. It's a very difficult time, and for those of us that went to the funeral, we heard some really quirky stories about Graham and some things he got up to in his life that none of us would be aware of because we've only known him for the last couple of years. So it was really amazing. One of the things that we found out about Graham, that he was a poet, one thing that I never knew. And I'd just like to read, before I sit down, just a small passage. But first off, he was only part of his council for a small amount of time, but he was a town councillor before that, as the chair said, and he was really dedicated to his area in St Neots and the Eatons area in particular. He worked very closely with Councillor Jennings, who I know is very saddened not to be able to be here tonight to speak about Graham, and because they did work very, very closely. But I do just want to read the final couple of lines from one of the poems that he wrote. And it's, "There should be no sadness, no sorrow or tears. Once the moment has passed, there'll be many more years. Lift up your glass filled with spirits and beers, a toast to my memory, God bless you, cheers." Now, I hope that everyone in this chamber tonight, when you go home and have a drink after this meeting, that you do cheers to Graham's memory. Although we only knew him for a very short time, he had an impact on all of us and the residents of this district. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Martin. Councillor Sarah Conboy.
Thank you, Councillor Martin. Very well said. Like everybody, we were also very sad and very shocked to hear of his passing. And I wasn't able to make the funeral. I was working that day, but I was really grateful that a number of us were able to be there. And I hope I don't embarrass Graham's family, but people came back and talked about how wonderful it was to hear about a side of Graham that many of us didn't know. So I heard about the poetry and the fact that I didn't know that that was a talent he had. I hadn't known he'd been a London bus driver. And apparently he was a Spurs supporter. So I think what I'd reflect is we get to know each other in this chamber, but we only ever see normally a very small side of each other. And I'm sometimes saddened that we don't know more about each other until somebody's no longer with us. But the world has been a better place because of the work that Graham did and the contribution he made to his community and to this council. He will be very sadly missed, and I really hope that his family watch tonight and get some comfort from knowing how much he was respected amongst all of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Conboy. Councillor Sanderson, please.
Thank you, Chair. Two, I think, eloquent and moving tributes to Graham. I thought it was a lovely poem that Councillor Martin quoted, and I didn't realise he had that talent. I didn't know Graham that well, and it's even sadder now, isn't it, that we didn't have a chance to chat to him about some of his experiences. I always found him an incredibly polite and kind person, though I know he was very well respected in his ward in the Eatons. And it's just a shame that we knew him for such a short time. He spent a short time on this council. That's very regrettable. But I suspect a few of us after the meeting, if time allows, we will raise a glass or two to Graham. And like Councillor Conboy, I hope his family are watching and appreciate just how much his colleagues here will miss him.
Thank you, Councillor Sanderson. We will now have a few moments silence to remember him. Thank you. Thank you very much, everybody. Please remain seated. Thank you. I would like to take the opportunity to remind members that the seminar tomorrow evening on the integrated water management studies, the presentation will include an update on the Council's strategic flood risk assessment and water cycle study, and will be held tomorrow at 6 p.m. Tomorrow here on Microsoft Teams. Further details can be obtained from Democratic Services. My engagements are listed on page 17 of your agenda. And one final thing I'd just like to say is that the charities I've selected to support for this year are MAGPAS and the Papworth Trust, which does amazing work for disabled and disadvantaged people. Thank you. Item number 5, questions by members of the public. In accordance with the Council Procedure Rule 10.1, I understand that no public questions have been received, and therefore we can move on to the next agenda item. Item number 6, State of the District 2024. Can I ask Executive Leader Councillor Conboy on behalf of the Joint Administration to present us on the State of the District 2024 and to open the debate which will follow. I would like to remind you that in accordance with council procedure rules, a member may speak once and no speech may exceed 5 minutes in length without the consent of the chair. Thank you. Over to you, Councillor Conboy.
Thank you very much, Chair. Good evening, Council. In this State of the District address, I'm pleased to be able to update you on all that we've achieved in the last year. I should warn you, this will not be quick because there's an awful lot to cover, but I suspect that if I covered everything, I would be here all evening. So these are some of the highlights I wanted to share with you. 2024 marks a significant milestone as we celebrate this council's 50th anniversary. Tonight, we're going to reflect on our journey, celebrate our achievements, and look forward to the future. But I want to start by expressing my sincere thanks to the officers and members who've supported everything we've achieved in this last year. Last March, we agreed on a new corporate plan for the District Council, which informs everything we do as we refocus our vision, review our priorities, and work with staff, residents, partners, communities, and businesses to lead Huntingdonshire into the future with confidence. The corporate plan outlines our 3 key priorities: improving the quality of life for our local people, creating a better Huntingdonshire for future generations, and doing our core work well. To keep us on track, we're measuring our performance in a way that hasn't been done before. In November last year, we adopted a new performance management framework that sets out how this council manages, reports on, and scrutinises performance. Every corporate plan outcome has a key performance indicator, or indicators plural, and we report on those not only at overview and scrutiny, but publicly so that everyone can see them. By holding ourselves to account in this way, we strive to do more. And over this last year, we certainly have done more. So let's look at what we've achieved. We want the highest possible quality of life for the people of Huntingdonshire. Based on the foundations of personal independence, prosperity, social connection, community and good health, we want Huntingdonshire to be a place residents are proud to call home. To that end, we've provided more support for people who need it most with the Council Tax Support Scheme adopted last year. The scheme offers increased support of up to 100% of the council tax bill for households on our lowest incomes. We want everyone to live in a safe, high-quality home, regardless of health, stage of life, family structure, income, or tenure type. And we've made remarkable achievements towards this aim. Over the last year, we've completed 703 affordable homes, 494 of which are specifically for affordable and social rent, offering much-needed options for our community. This has also helped us with our housing waiting list, prevented excessive use of temporary accommodation, and supported our asylum seekers. Through the Homes for Ukraine programme, our communities and housing teams have ensured that no families presented as homeless, rematching was successful, and some super hosts supported 2 or 3 families. While some families and individuals have moved back to the Ukraine, 73 families have moved into their own accommodation through private or social rentals. Through our Disabilities Facilities grants, 185 people were able to live at home safely and prevented from requiring or needing long-term hospital stay. Our One Leisure Active Lifestyles and Sports Development programmes are continuing to see high attendance. These programmes offer preventative interventions targeted at specific health conditions and the wider population. Our Community Health Prevention Project, which saw us receive $250,000 from the Integrated Care System, enabled us to roll out free physical activity courses to help prevent cardiovascular disease. Led by Active Lifestyles, the funding also supported the Escape Pain Pilot Scheme, a group rehabilitation programme for people with chronic pain that integrates educational self-management and coping strategies with exercise. and that first cohort is up and running and focuses on referrals from GP services. More people are staying more active and more often. Our One Leisure facilities in Huntingdon, Ramsey, St Ives and St Neots saw over 1 million admissions last year. This is testament to the great staff and facilities they have to offer and goes to show just how valued our leisure offer is when we think about the challenging economic climate that we've been operating in. Good employment also plays a vital role in improving people's quality of life. Local people should be able to develop the skills that take advantage of opportunities, and businesses and education providers should work more closely together to deliver an inclusive economy. So that's why in May, we were delighted to celebrate the opening of the East Anglia Energy Academy in St Ives. This academy will bring new job skills and investment into our district. With a focus on renewable energy, the Academy, which is a joint venture between Reed Environment and Oxford Energy Academies, aims to attract more young people to the trade skills careers path and encourage established tradespeople to upskill. The phenomenal support from our economic development team enabled Reed to win significant local contracts that accelerated that timeline. And as a result, the Academy will support 150 apprentices and 400 adult learners by 2025, and that's September of 2025. That's a really fast turnaround. This will give local people a route into high-quality jobs with growing opportunities and provide the skills our economy needs for our houses and businesses to transition to net zero. This protects our environment for the future while reducing our energy costs and makes homes more comfortable to live in today. We want our local economy to be a place where businesses choose to start up. See that I've been talking for too long about all the good things and the microphone's gone off. I'll carry on. Where was I? We want our local economy to be a place where businesses choose to start up, grow and invest in high-value jobs so that our residents and high streets can thrive. Our Shopfront grant scheme, which provides grants of up to £10,000 to local businesses, is funded by the Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Combined Authority, and it's gone from strength to strength. After being rolled out initially in Huntingdon and St Ives, it was extended to Ramsey and St Neots. And on the 1st of July, a district-wide Shopfront grant scheme was launched. To date, it's awarded 31 grants with a committed total value of £136,894. But we also recognise the unique challenges faced by our rural enterprises, and that's why we've secured £350,000 of funding from the Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Combined Authority to support the growth of rural businesses. This funding will enable businesses, including farms, to diversify their income streams and help create positive change, innovation and growth in our district. Working with local partners and people, our Market Towns programme, an ambitious programme to renew and reshape our town centres and high streets for the future, continues at pace. At the beginning of the year, work started in St Neots Town Centre to ensure that it's fit for the future, more accessible, and can respond to the growing population and the number of people who live and work in close proximity. The improvements to the Market Square will make it a fantastic space for all who visit. It will be a more attractive environment, and the town centre will continue to be successful in hosting regular activities and events in the square. Our investment in the Priory Centre in St Neots will also make it a much more attractive and exciting venue for amateur dramatics, touring shows and community events. It will also be a great place to sit and enjoy the beautiful riverside setting. In Ramsey, and if you joined Cabinet last night, I'm not going to mention Fox in Socks or Shops in Box, but in Ramsey, we're also working on improving the Great White Area by redesigning and enhancing public spaces and developing new, low-cost opportunities for independent traders to sell goods and services in the town centre as part of our Market Produce Hub initiative. We're also continuing to take positive action to reduce carbon emissions and become a net zero council by 2040. We've conducted a trial using hydro-treated vegetable oil, HVO fuel, in our refuse vehicles and some of our vans, sweepers, tractors and mowers. This is significantly better for the environment than diesel or biodiesel. We've teamed up with Cambridgeshire Police and Cambridgeshire Fire as part of the trial, and HVO is being used by HDC, the police and the fire service vehicles. Collectively, we have reduced the carbon across those services by 72 tonnes compared to standard diesel. This is a great example of HDC influencing and collaborating with others to do the right thing and follow our lead. Thanks to the Biodiversity for All programme, we continue to enable and encourage local people and businesses to reduce carbon emissions and increase biodiversity across Huntingdonshire. We hosted our first ever climate conversation events in November, which provided a space for residents, community groups, business owners, farmers, town and parish councils, and environmentalists to learn and share ideas about tackling climate change. Our ongoing efforts to tackle the causes and effects of climate change have seen the Council climb up the ranking tables of the Climate Emergency UK scorecard results. According to the scorecards, we are now positioned at the national average at 96 out of 164 councils with a score of 27%. That's up from 0% in 2021. That's quite some achievement. Our essential services form the basis of our everyday work, whether that's keeping green spaces clear of litter, collecting household waste, preventing homelessness, carrying out environmental health inspections or clearing up after fly tipping. Around 80% of this council's resources are aligned to business as usual and must set an excellent example to our community of the standards we expect for our residents. At the beginning of the month, nearly 43,000 households had been successfully subscribed to the new garden waste subscription service. Behind the scenes, many services across the council have worked hard to ensure this smooth transition and implementation. Some of our day-to-day work over the last year has seen us collect 97% of council tax, of which we only keep 7 pence in every pound, and 99% of business rates. We've administered £250,000 worth of energy bill rebate support payments to 885 applicants to help people deal with the rising price of energy. We've awarded green flag status, or we have been awarded green flag status at Paxton Pits and Hinchinbrook Country Park for the 6th year in a row, and at Priory Park for the 7th. And in breaking news, at St Neots Riverside Park for the first time. And this is where I want to give a big shout out to our volunteers, as we couldn't do this without you. Thank you. Our financial stability is vital to all we've achieved in the last year. As more and more councils across the country face financial difficulty, I'm proud that we're delivering on our promise of long-term financial sustainability. While the decisions have not been universally popular, they have been prudent, and they ensure that we're able to be here for our residents and provide the services that they need. We've set a budget that's balanced, doesn't spend baseline reserves, and importantly protects frontline services. All this at a time of decreasing government funding, rising costs and inflation, a greater pressure on our services, and when others have had to declare that they're no longer financially viable and issue Section 114 notices. By building solid financial foundations, we can build a future based on outcomes and the protection of services for our most vulnerable people so that individuals and families avoid crisis. While much has been achieved, we can always do more. So let's look ahead. We recently participated in the Local Government Association Corporate Peer Challenge because we're committed to continuous improvement. We've also welcomed external support to help identify areas of improvement and learn from others. We've participated in an audit peer challenge and a governance review, and later this year, we'll participate in a planning peer challenge. By welcoming our peers to give us feedback when many don't, we constantly challenge ourselves to do even more, and this is a sign of a mature organisation. We've introduced a new contextual outcome measures dashboard, which we're sharing with the public on our website. It shows how we perform against our peers and enables us to benchmark our performance. We are one of the first authorities to do this, and to do this so transparently. And this will underpin the work we do in the coming year. The new productivity plan, which goes beyond the basic requirements, now sits alongside a new continuous improvement delivery plan. That continuous improvement plan will focus our attention over the next 2 years to ensure we never stop striving to be as efficient and as effective as possible. So over the coming year, there are other things to look forward to. We'll progress the delivery of the civil parking enforcement across the district to enforce on-street parking activity. We will be working on preparing to deliver weekly food waste collection, enabling households that cannot compost to have a curbside collection. We will continue encouraging everyone to reduce, recycle and reuse wherever possible, because we want to collect less waste, because that's better for the environment and better for family finances. We'll continue to update the local plan, which sets out how this district will grow over the next 2 decades and is key to delivering the long-term ambitions of the Huntingdonshire Futures Place strategy. Through our Huntingdonshire Futures grants, we'll provide local organisations with funding of £500 to £2,500 to enable groups to put on events or activities that support the Huntingdonshire Futures vision, such as improving physical and mental health, protecting and supporting our environment, and celebrating a sense of history and place. And I had the pleasure of working with some fellow councillors today to make some of those decisions. We will deliver a community health and wealth strategy that links broader social determinants of health with a community wealth building approach, and we'll develop this strategy using a deliberative democracy approach. We will continue to provide wide-ranging existing statutory and important services, seeking to improve their efficiency and effectiveness through our customer change programme. And key to all of this is our staff. We are extremely fortunate to have loyal and committed staff to both the council and the place. Following extensive engagement with staff, a new workforce strategy focusing on attraction and retention, engagement and wellbeing will be rolled out this year. Our staff are our biggest asset, and I want to thank every member of staff for what they do to ensure that Huntingdonshire is the best place possible. Do, enable and influence continues to be a crucial phrase for us as we will look to do a more enabling role, to use partnership working more, and to empower people to reduce demand for traditional public services. Our role is to help residents and businesses thrive, but that's not something we can do for people. Only by working with people can we do that in Huntingdonshire. And we want Huntingdonshire to be a place where people can have a good life and take advantage of the opportunities that benefit them. We will work constructively with the Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Combined Authority, Cambridgeshire County Council and our health colleagues. This will allow us to proactively influence and contribute to creating a devolution 2 deal for Cambridgeshire and Peterborough. Over the last year, we've grown positive and productive relationships with local town and parish councils, other public bodies, business partners and the third sector. We will continue investing in these critical commitments and involving our partners at every opportunity. And there will be a new communication and engagement strategy that will underpin this approach. As I come to a conclusion, I want to thank my fellow councillors. Whilst we put ourselves forward to represent our communities and willingly give hours of our time to make a difference to those we serve, the collective will in this chamber enables us to come together to put Huntingdonshire front and centre. We have repeatedly demonstrated that we can work across party boundaries, valuing different opinions and treating each other respectfully. I hope tonight that you will be proud of what your council delivers for Huntingdonshire. As I said at the beginning, 2024 marks a significant milestone for us as we celebrate that 50th anniversary. This council has achieved an awful lot in the last 50 years. As we look ahead to the next 50 years, we continue laying the foundations for the future that will deliver a greener and fairer Huntingdonshire for all. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Conboy. May I now invite Councillor Martin, Leader of the Principal Opposition, to respond to the address. Councillor Martin.
Thank you very much, Chair. And thank you very much to the Executive Leader as well. The Executive Leader continues to demonstrate how to lead the Council with grace, with courtesy and with great respect. She's been a consistent champion for Huntingdonshire, not just on a local level, but on a national level. And whilst we may not always agree on policies or the way forward or a direction that which we're heading, I think we should all be very grateful for the work that she has been doing, not over the last year, but the last couple of years that you've been in charge. So we're very grateful for that. Before I delve into a more substantive response, I'd like to reaffirm a commitment that my predecessor, Councillor Gray, made right at the start when the joint administration took over. And that is that we will support policies and ideas that are sensible, that make sense, and that we believe are true. We'll be a collaborative opposition. If we do not agree with something, if we believe that something you're doing is wrong or ideologically driven, then we will strongly oppose it. And I think that is what we have done over the last couple of years, and I know that we will continue to do so over the next 2 years leading up to the next election. It's really good to hear some of the positive things that are coming out of this district over the last couple of years, last year in particular. And the innovation that we're hearing in departments like the Ops Department, thank you. It's really positive, and hearing that innovation within our council obviously helps us not just cut costs, but be greener, and it then helps us to be out there a bit more and to spread this news with other authorities, which I think is a good thing that we should definitely be doing. I just want to talk a bit more. So there's been a significant amount of change over the last year. We've seen the departure of the stalwart Richard West from the role as councillor. Additionally, we've welcomed a new chief executive and a director for Place. We've also seen the formation of a new independent group and a new national government in a new Labour government. And for the first time in Huntingdonshire's history, we've got 3 MPs, all from different parties. So it's going to be really interesting to see how that has an impact on us locally in Huntingdonshire and Cambridgeshire as a whole. It's been really good to see the progress made in One Leisure. We all know that COVID and the rise of energy prices has had a huge impact on One Leisure and the leisure industry in general. And even over the last 3 or 4 years, the industry continues to face its struggles. It's very encouraging to see the work that's been going on with the long-term operating model for One Leisure. I think we need to see more of that long-distance horizon scanning as we move forward in decision-making within this council, and examine every corner of this district, not just look at what we've got, but look at what we could have. Looking at every side, rural and the urban areas of this district, because we are a very diverse area. I'd like to join Councillor Conboy in thanking all the officers and staff for the hard work that they have been doing. much of that work goes completely unnoticed, because what the general public see is the big, grand, flashy projects or the controversial decision making. But a lot of what goes on in this council is the business as usual, the things behind the scene. So I'd like to pass to put on record my thanks from not just myself, but from my group, to all of our staff within the district council. They are very much the unsung heroes of Huntingdonshire. Now, when I speak to residents about the state of this district, the thing that I hear all too often is the state of the district visually is very poor. And Chair, I'm being very courteous when I say very poor, because trust me, what I'm hearing is a lot worse than very poor. We walk around and everywhere you go, you see weeds in our roads and in our paths. And I know rewilding areas is really important in this district for our environment, but do we really need to be rewilding our roads and paths? I don't think so. This is not only unsightly, but it has an impact on our residents and the operations team within this council, especially when it comes to trying to get our road sweepers over, when we're trying to unblock drains that are filled up with dead weeds that have grown too long, died away, and then blocking up the drains, causing flooding for some areas of this district, including my own area. Now, obviously, HCC has no control over whether Cambridgeshire County Council sprays weeds, but this administration, some of whom are part of that administration, have the power to influence. We heard in your report, and we hear it time and time again, the big part of this council is do, enable, influence. But what has the administration done to influence the county council to reverse that decision? Now, obviously, that decision has now been reversed, but it is a year on. We knew these problems were coming up when the decision was first made, and we've been challenging it along the way. So I think that decision should have been overturned sooner. And did the administration have that influence on the county council to reverse it quicker? And in our place strategy, we talk about pride in place. And seeing weeds everywhere residents aren't proud of the area when they see weeds growing out of pathways in the middle of roads. So I think it's something to reflect on as we move forward. Planning, although improving, continues to be a concern to me, particularly with a no amendments policy. The cost of this policy to the area, residents and investors to Huntingdonshire is unclear. But from the people that I speak to, it's a very costly policy. Part of this council is benefiting from applicants having to reapply, pay their money again, but also there are many that we speak to that cannot afford to reapply, or even worse, decide to go elsewhere. There is a business that I spoke to a few months ago, and I believe they spoke to the peer review team as well, that they put in an application, they needed a few minor tweaks to it to get it through, but the planning team said, no, you have to withdraw it and reapply. So what that business did was move to Peterborough. Is that what we want for Huntingdonshire? Do we want to be sending business away from our area, bringing in employment and high-skilled jobs? I don't think so. So I think one of the things we really need to focus on in the next year is looking at that policy and seeing how we can make adjustments to it to work for what we're looking to do in Huntingdonshire. Now, my final point to make before making my closing remarks is on scrutiny and decision making. In this council, we have 52 councillors of completely different backgrounds, skills and experience. But are we utilising that? Are we being heard, and are the comments being taken seriously when considering policies? When we are told in call-in meetings, and I quote, that meeting is a waste of time, and good ideas and challenges are glossed over and not always taken seriously, not on all occasions I will add, but on some occasion, it raises concerns to me. Could this be due to a lack of time between scrutiny and cabinet? I think that's something that we need to consider as well. From the peer review meeting where we met with all the scrutiny members, it was clear that this sentiment isn't just shared on this side of the house. This is a sentiment that is shared across the whole of this chamber. So, scrutiny is not there to be feared. It is there to be embraced, because at the end of the day, we all want the same thing. We all want a better Huntingdonshire, and we want this council to thrive. So, looking over the next year and the next couple of years, expect us to challenge and push back more on certain decisions. But you have my commitment that this will be done fairly and with respect. We will not be starting disagreements for the sake of it. We will challenge where we think something is wrong and more work is needed. And that is a commitment that I make to the whole chamber now. But finally, I would just like to end on a more positive note and highlighting some amazing work that's been going on across the district. Yesterday evening, I had the opportunity to go to the Hunts Forum Awards Night, which was a fantastic evening. And it was an opportunity for volunteers and people across the district to be recognised for the incredible work that they do across our area, giving back to this community. And I was particularly inspired by Vari Russell, who set up Creating Nature's Corridor. And when she set it up, their ambition was to plant 10,000 trees or hedges across the district every single year. This year so far, she has planted 20,000. She did this off her own back, with no support from councils, with no support from local people by and large. She started this up on her own back, went to businesses to try and find the funding, to find the support, to find the help to do this. And she's planted 20,000 trees in the last year alone. These are sort of achievements that we should be shouting about in this council, hence why I'm raising them today. We should be doing more to thank these people and recognise the hard work that they are doing, and recognise the selfless work of people like Vari. And I'd also especially like to mention it was really good to be there as the ward member of Sawtry. We had Keith and Anne Parker, who worked for the Crescos in Sawtry, winning the Gold Award, which is the highest award that you can get in the Hunts Forum Awards ceremony. So that was really good as a ward councillor to see. But how can we integrate things like that, award ceremonies, recognising the volunteers of this district? Because without them, this district would not be where it is today, and we would be in a far worse place. So I'm sure I speak for the whole chamber when we all thank the residents that give up their time, their effort, their energy and their money to support volunteers like this in ensuring that this district is a better place to live in. That's all I have, Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor Martin. Is there anybody else amongst the members who would like to comment, please? No? Councillor Hodgson-Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And firstly, my apologies for being late. There was a signal failure around the Welland area, which meant I was late coming up from London. I know that Councillor Martin spoke about weeds at length in his speech, but I wanted to pick up on something that the leader said in her presentation when she talked about trying to remove litter from green spaces. But I'd like us to think about the way that we look at our grey spaces and removing the green litter from our grey spaces, because that's what those weeds are. They are a form of litter and they need to be removed. Thank you.
Councillor Martin. Sorry, Councillor Hunt.
There we go. Thank you, Chair. I'd like to thank the Executive Leader for her presentation. It's a brilliant showcase of what we've achieved and a great chance to reflect. I'm proud of what we've achieved as an administration during the past year, and I'm also proud in my, albeit very small, role in that. As Huntingdonshire turns 50 and approaches middle age, I think it's only fitting to talk about, no surprises from me, young people. Why? Because as a young person, time and time again, it can feel like there's a huge disconnect about what matters to us and what happens in council chambers. But I'm proud to say that's not the case here. I might be biased, but I think this administration is delivering for young people. Over 700 new affordable homes, continue with the exceptional sports and leisure facilities and youth skills and trading providers in our areas, and the good quality jobs they bring with them all sound pretty good to me. As someone who started their career with an apprenticeship in energy, I know the genuine life-changing difference and opportunities that having the new East Anglia Energy Academy in our patch will bring. On top of that, there's been real action on our climate action plan, cutting our council's carbon footprint and supporting the local area energy plan. And award-winning parks and spaces across our area doesn't sound too bad either. All of these things we can be proud of for delivering for our residents. I think there's one clear message that comes through tonight. Local government matters. It matters if you care about the quality of your high street. It matters if you care about your local environment. It matters if you care about your access to green space, if you care about bins, if you care about sport. It matters if you care about your community. It matters if you care about your future. Local government has a massive impact on all of our lives. I think it's fair to say for most people, your local councils have more of a direct noticeable impact on your day-to-day life than the national government. Personally, I would urge every councillor in this chamber to keep this in mind. Day in, day out. On to the future. There's another year of hard work ahead, and I think everyone in this chamber will be excited to get stuck into it. I know that I'll be pushing to get the best for my residents over the next 12 months and flying the flag for young people across our district. And when we're all back here this time next year, I'm hopeful that I'll be making another speech just like this one.
Thank you, Councillor Sanderson.
Thank you, Chair. I think we've had a very good debate. I think excellent contributions by Councillor Conboy and Councillor Martin. Lots of comments about weeds from Councillor Martin, though I have to say puts his points far better than his counterpart at Cambridgeshire County Council, to say the least. Of course, weed spraying last year, I think that was a mistake not doing it. It has happened this year. Of course, weather the weather we've had has created a lot of problems. But I'm pleased to see that the work has taken place. Just to pick up on his mention of the no amendments policy, in fact, the inspector ruled in our favour when discussing or giving judgment on our no amendments policy. So there is some case study there that supports it. I wasn't aware of the business that he mentions that moved to Peterborough, but I'm happy to look into it if he'd like to notify me. There are a lot of very positive things happening in planning, which unfortunately haven't been mentioned. The backlog is being cleared considerably. Our pre-app service has been very successful and is generating a lot of income for the council. If I'm asked later, which I possibly will be, I'll add more detail, but our major applications this month, the month of June, we were 100% on target in determination, and our household applications were 95%. So a lot of positive things happening throughout the organisation, and I'm very proud to be part of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Simone Taylor.
Thank you, Chair. I wasn't actually going to speak on this, but I value what you are saying about weeds, and I am totally with you. And believe me, I have spent many emails to my counterparts in county. I have spoken at county on a motion at it, and just on Tuesday, I have emailed the CEO, and we have had a good response. So what has been happening is that HDC have been working collaboratively with CCC, and we have been manually removing weeds. We've been removing them in response to the complaints that were put on CCC report a fault. So those are the areas that have been done. We've also just recently been given another 15 days for our street cleaning team to be contracted from CCC to do this throughout our district. Also, the weed spraying is taking place now. If you look on Cambridgeshire County Council website, there is only today a brand new video with the chairman of Highways and Transport and the vice chair going out with the weed sprayers, which is done on like a quad bike. They have now got in another company to do it. They are not using Milestone, and they are going to be ramping up this process throughout the district and the county. So please do visit CCC website. It is happening, and I totally agree with you.
Thank you, everybody, for your contributions. Moving on.
Councillor Wakeford.
Sorry, Councillor Wakeford. Yeah.
It's all right, Chair. A life at the end of the alphabet and most registers. I'm well used. Thank you. The executive leader has gone into significant detail of some of what we are proudest of over the past year and longer. I endorse every word of it, so members will be pleased to know I don't feel any need to repeat it from her. I would merely reflect that as a council, we're in a good place. And I'd also commend, as she and Councillor Martin have done, the exceptionally hard work of our staff, as well as our wider pool of volunteers who assist the council's work as well. But there is much left to do for our district itself over the remaining now less than 2 years of this particular administration, and I dare say work beyond that too. We do what we can within our power and control, and then some. So I'm particularly proud we've embraced the challenge as well as the risk of seeking to enable and influence those beyond our control to work alongside us to achieve our priorities in the interests of all of our residents and to tackle the root causes of challenges for them as well. But there are many levers we lack at local level. So as the new government in Westminster commences its very large programme of hard work and service, I look forward to working with colleagues here from across the chamber to take best advantage for our area of new opportunities the new government may enable for us, including many of which that may well require engagement and unlocking on a cross-party basis, as Councillor Martin alluded to. It's perhaps a little disappointing that as events panned out, we are competing for coverage this evening with something taking place in Westminster. Perhaps next year, Executive Leader, furs and elaborate headgear might be worth a try to attract a little further attention and balance that. It might be worth a go, at least. I'd also like to commend the tone of, I think, almost everything our opposition leader said as well this evening. I wondered briefly if he'd mistaken which councillor he was addressing, but before I'd even had the thought, he clarified he knew precisely where he was and that this is not the county. And he did recognise that the particular county policy he referenced has been revised already, and as Councillor Taylor indicated, we have indeed been using our good offices and influence to encourage that. Councillor Sanderson beat me to commenting more fully, so I won't, in terms of his reference of the costs of the no amendments policy in planning. I'd just remind colleagues, of course, that clearly nobody has adopted that for fun. What he omitted to reference was the costs of the enormous decision delays as a result of the massive backlog in planning, which was not unique to this council, of course, given challenges we appreciate, but was very much inherited from us from the previous administration. So needs must, but we are making considerable progress, as Councillor Sanderson keeps us regularly appraised of. And like Councillor Sanderson, I'd invite him to share details of the businesses, the business that he referenced, because between our economic development and planning capacities, we'd love to hear a little bit further. Thank you, colleagues.
Thank you, Councillor Wakeford. Right, we'll now move on to item number 7, questions to members of the Cabinet. Now to the item where councillors may ask questions to members of the Cabinet. Before we start this item, I remind you that all questions must be relevant to matters for which the council has powers or duties, must not relate to an item which is included elsewhere on the council agenda, since they can be raised at that point in the meeting, should be limited to obtaining information or pressing for action, must not divulge or require to be divulged confidential or exempt information, and must not exceed 2 minutes in duration. I would also like to remind you that if you would like to take the opportunity to ask a supplementary question, can we please ensure that these are raised through the chair and not directly to the Executive Councillor. I would ask members to keep their questions succinct and to the point and as short as they can so that we can get the maximum number of questions in with the 15 minutes which are allowed. So thank you. Are there any questions?
Councillor Niche.
Councillor Niche.
Thank you, Chair. You may have to indulge me on this one because it goes back to item 4 on the agenda, where I was there trying to get some attention to say there was a actually point that I wanted to bring across from your announcements. So I know this item is actually questions to the Cabinet, but I don't know whether the Chair would like to indulge me on just a small question or a point about his engagements, which I have to say are very impressive. The only bit I'd like to bring up, and it's just a point really, is a number of people probably aren't aware that I'm actually the District's Armed Forces champion still. And I take that role very seriously. Unfortunately, I wasn't aware that we were actually doing a flag raising this time round. And even if I had been, I actually wasn't around. But could we ensure that in future that things like flag raising for Armed Forces Day is actually a bit more early publicised, because I have a wide network. I mean, I knew there were plenty of others going on elsewhere, but it's just a point that I personally wasn't aware. And I know when I talked to colleagues, it was like a couple of days beforehand that it came about. So it's just a slight point there, really, because there are a number of people, veterans outside residents, who would like to have attended, and I'm sure it would be benefit to us all. So it's just that point, if I may, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Niche. I'd just like to say that I concur very much with what he's saying. I would like to see more made of our civic ceremonies like flag raising, and I believe we could, and I know we have done so in the past. I have spoken about it with some of our officers, and I'm aware of this point, but I thank you for bringing that up because I think it is an important point. Thank you. Councillor Ian Taylor.
Thank you, Chair. I don't know exactly who this is aimed at, really, but I'm sure somebody will tell me. I've been trying to get some defibrillators installed in Amesbury on two pieces of on two buildings that the HDC actually own. I've got the planning permission. I've got the permission, sorry, from the business owners that rent them from us, and they're willing to pay for the electricity, etc. So Nates Town Council have been quite kindly agreed to pay for them to be to the actual physical things, but also for them to be installed with a qualified electrician. My question really is can we, because it's taken 2 years so far and I've still not achieved this, can we sort out a policy or a streamlined way of doing this? Because 2 years so far and I've still not got them installed. Is there something we could get a policy out there to sort of try and streamline this? I don't know, is it possible?
Councillor Toad, could I just ask which member of the Cabinet you're directing the question to?
I presume, I do not know, because this cuts across quite a lot. It cuts across the Councillor Middleburg, because he's in charge of the estates. We've got health with Councillor Ben Pitt. So I don't know who wants to take up the mantle for this.
Which Cabinet member, Councillor Micklebauer, would you like to answer the question? Thank you.
I think the complexity of all sorts of tenancy agreements and the nature of commercial agreements that in some cases have been signed 40 plus years ago make a generic answer to that question impossible. What we need to do is to go away and look at each individual item. As a landlord, you need to allow your tenants to have quiet enjoyment of the facilities that they are renting from you. Therefore, to impose something on them would be difficult. However, in the wider terms, I think it is a positive idea, and what we need to do is to take it away and consider how we may fit it into contract into the future. So leave that one with me, and we'll come back to it at the course of the next council.
Thank you. Councillor Burke.
Thank you, Chair. My question is to Councillor Pitt. With One Leisure now being within your portfolio of community health and leisure, and with the great news that we've heard through Councillor Comboy's State of the District report, I just wondered if we could have some more specific data on the usage and financial performances of One Leisure across the district.
Thank you, Councillor Burke. So I've been responsible for community and health for 2 years, and while it's an extremely lean department, we've done some really great work, but it's often been quite sort of strategic and slightly ephemeral, and so I'm delighted to have a slightly more visible part to my portfolio, including leisure. So I come into this role, I find One Leisure in really robust health, so I'd like to start by saying thank you to officers and to Councillor Taylor for handing over One Leisure in such great shape. I checked in with our head of leisure today and One Leisure, and I understand that direct debit membership, which has now recovered from a significant dip during the pandemic, is now at an all-time high of 8,400 members. And One Leisure Swim School has seen an increase of 14% in the last 2 years. Active health sessions have increased by over 50% in 1 year. The Active Health team are working closely with care homes across Huntingdonshire, and so we're now working with, we were 5 in January of this year, we're now up to 15, and we have a target of 25 by March 2025. And we began working with health and wellbeing partners to repurpose existing space to reach new audiences by bringing them into our One Leisure centres. So our total income for One Leisure is up by 10% in 12 months. Costs have gone up by 3.7%, so that's almost halved the deficit, the operating deficit of One Leisure, down to 37,000. So we're getting really close to that break-even point that we're really keen to achieve. In March 2024, as I think has already been reported, we've secured £700,000 from Sport England to install a solar canopy at the car park at One Leisure St Ives, and also triple glazing for the swimming pool. And we're also looking to invest in other opportunities for PV, which will mean that we can drive down those running costs even further. So I enjoyed a tour of the One Leisure facilities last week. I'm really looking forward to getting down into the detail and the numbers next week with our head of One Leisure and getting stuck into sweat the assets, both in terms of the finances, but also in terms of the social benefit for our One Leisure sites. Thank you.
Councillor Jonathan Gray.
My question is to the leader of the council. In a rare fit of organisation, I decided to go onto the council's website to look at the members of your cabinet. I'm absolutely delighted to see that Ben Obsi-Jegti has been appointed to your cabinet, according to the website. I was slightly disappointed to see Sam Carling was there as well, and somebody called Ian Solomon, but we'll gloss over that. But anyway, just on a serious note, I'm going to ask a very easy question of you. Would you agree with me that the organisation of the recent election here in Huntingdon, in the Huntingdon constituency, was exceptionally well run? I don't think Huntingdon has ever declared as early as it did this time round, and I thought it was a model of how an election should be run by the officers particularly, but I would say also by the candidates and their various counting agents and supporters around the room as well. I thought it was an excellent evening, and I'd like to see whether or not you would agree with me that we should place that on record.
Councillor Comboy.
I haven't had a chance to reply to her. I'd love to agree with you comment. So thank you very much for that opportunity. And I genuinely would like to agree with you absolutely wholeheartedly. And thank you, because it does allow us to say thank you very much and recognise the fantastic team of staff and volunteers that worked not only throughout the day and the following day, but in the weeks of preparation. I'm still, every room I go into, it doesn't matter how hard the cleaners work, there are tiny bits of paper where people were busy preparing boxes and postal votes and everything else that was needed. I would agree with you. A whole credit, and poor Mrs. Jablonska, I do remember the day that it was announced, had one of those moments of like, but I've only just done an election. And our poor returning officer, new in role as our returning officer, has not just had one outing, but two. So, yeah, congratulations, and I would be delighted to agree with you. If we have inadvertently added some MPs to our website, we will address that. But I have to say, I'm very delighted that we have 3 that cover Huntingdonshire, and we've already extended an invitation for them to come and to meet with you, with us collectively. And I very much hope that if we can possibly tease them away from Westminster, that we might even get them to a meeting here with all of us, because I think that would be really welcome. And I'm sure that we've all got big things that we'd like to share with them. So thank you for such a lovely question.
Thank you. Councillor Tevlin.
Thank you, Chair. This is for Councillor Sanderson. So last week I attended a really fantastic meeting to do with affordable housing and rural exception sites, both in Bluntisham and Colne. And it was great to see how rural exception sites can be used in our sort of planning policy and the local plan to be used most effectively. But my question here is an update on planning performance, and also if there's any update as well where we are with the local plan as well. Thank you.
Good evening, Chair. Thank you very much, Councillor Tevlin, for your question. So as I said earlier, major applications were for June 100% on target. We had a bullseye, basically. The actual target, though, is 82%, so we've done extremely well. Household applications, 95%. These are the applications that we've processed within 16 weeks. Our backlog, which was 180 in April 2023, is now down to just 80 in June. The no amendments policy, I think, has actually helped with that. In terms of the local plan, there will be a paper going to scrutiny in early September, which will be a paper on the further issues and options. So I'd encourage members, if they wish to go to that meeting and participate. Thank you.
Councillor Lowe.
Thank you. Just another question to Councillor Sanderson. Just wondering how planning enforcement is coping, because I have a planning enforcement issue that is 18 months ongoing, and it's getting worse. So it'd be good to have an idea of how things are in enforcement. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Planning enforcement is actually making a lot of progress as well. We're more than meeting our targets, but I think I may actually be aware of the case you raised, Councillor Lowe, but perhaps we could speak outside the meeting, and I'm happy to help in any way I can. Thank you.
Councillor Ross Martin.
Thank you very much, Chair. And Councillor Gray stole my thunder with his question, which isn't a problem at all, as the Chairman and I discussed yesterday when was the best time to do that. But I've got another question, so don't worry. But Democratic Services obviously haven't just had the general election, they've had Yaxley by-election, Great Paxton by-election, PCC election, and now another by-election unfortunately in Graham Welton's seat. So it's been non-stop for that team. So a big well done and thank you to them. But my question is again for the Executive Leader. Yesterday we saw at Cabinet, was the first time that I've seen it, the use of special urgency powers to bring forward a piece of work that needs to happen before the next cycle of the democratic system. Could I just ask her to reflect and to maybe go away and we have a discussion to find, is there a better way of doing this? And maybe this is something for the Constitutional Review Committee, because I'm sure that there are people on this side of the chamber, as there are on the backbenches of your own side, that would want to have an input on that decision and any future decisions that go through that special urgency provision. So is there a way that we can find an informal way of other members having an input to any response to consultations like this, as I'm sure there's lots of people that would want to have that opportunity?
if I may, Chair. So thank you very much for that. Yes, I agree. It was far from ideal, and the answer is the special urgency was used as a real exception. It is one of the things that we've discussed with officers, because clearly this is going to be an important project. We're at the start of a process, so anything that we submit now there'll be lots of opportunities for us to shape it. But actually, fen reservoirs are really, really going to be important to us. And one of the things that we're worrying about is too much water in some places, not enough in others, and in some places too much and not enough at the same time. So it really matters we get this right, and the potential impact for us positively is significant, but there will be people worried about the delivery of this project, because it's a long-term project and it will affect the whole of our area, even though some of it physically sits beyond our boundaries. So absolutely, we'll take that away. We will have a look at, I think it's entirely right that the Constitution Review Working Group, this might well be something that they would want to look at. Thank you for the question.
Is it in order, Chair, for in the Executive Leader's remaining time as portfolio holder who brought that paper, just to supplement briefly, of course, that what we decided at Cabinet last night was not to agree the content of a consultation, but merely to take the authority to be able to produce and submit one, and absolutely engagement on a cross-party basis is 100% the plan, not least with ward members involved, who are all of Councillor Martin's group. So had we not taken that opportunity, we wouldn't have had the legal ability to give a voice to the concerns of his ward members in the relevant areas. We've done that, and I echo the Executive Leader's commitment to engaging on that, and clearly there's a broader point around whether there's value in formalising a process that we use very occasionally, and happy to consider that too.
Thank you, members. We are running short of time. I'm going to take two more questions. The first is from Councillor Nick Wells, please.
Thank you, Chair. A very brief one, you'd be pleased to know. Question for Councillor Harvey. Could you please provide an update on internal audit, and particularly the personal internal audit manager, which became vacant earlier in the year? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wells, for your question. One of the first things that I did on joining the Cabinet was to help interview candidates for the role of the Internal Audit Manager, and we're really pleased to have been able to offer that role to Yasir Khan. Yasir started with us a couple of weeks ago and he's hit the ground running. He's already looking through everything. Thank you.
And the final question, please, from Councillor John Nish.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for indulging, because my first question obviously wasn't to a Cabinet member. Although I did manage to slip it in. Through the Chair. Through the Chair. It is actually for Councillor Sanderson, only because my colleague is missing it. And it's a positive news spin on this one, because I'm really pleased to see that the affordable housing numbers have really massively increased. But I'm sure you'd agree with me, the majority of those have probably been on the statute books, on our books, for quite a long while, so not necessarily under the current one, but it's really improved dramatically, so that is really good. My actual question is really, now we've got a downturn, as I know, over the last year, of the number of applications coming through full stop, and also the reduction in the backlog. There must be quite a bit of, not spare capacity, that'd be the wrong thing to say, because there's never spare capacity in planning, as I full well don't know that, but with the maybe a little bit of leeway, can they now start looking, as we've talked about before, at having some discussions maybe with some of the applicants, whether they be developers or individual applicants, on not necessarily amendments, but those discussion points of when things are not quite right, and it's not an amendment they want, it's something that hasn't been provided. So that's my first question on that one, is actually would they start looking at easing some of that restriction on what do you call an amendment, is my first one, and maybe we can talk outside that one. So that's the first one. But the added question really is also, could he confirm that also the added bonus of the increase, that the fees that we've now had in from pre-app fees, which obviously we brought in the previous administration, which has greatly helped, and also I can now say the previous government who have increased pleas and planning. Thank goodness they did, because that was vastly out. Can he also confirm there really that that money, that the additional money that's coming into planning will be ring fenced for planning? Because I know last time when I asked, it was sort of slightly sort of glossed over, but it's planning is really important to us and actually to everybody for growth, etc., etc. And I can see Councillor Wakeford's trying to bend your ear as well on that one.
Thank you, Chair. I'm getting it from both sides there, wasn't I? In terms of the no, both very, very useful feedback from both sides, though. In terms of the no amendment policy, we actually already do that. We do try and help applicants as much as we possibly can, but I'm certainly be pleased to take that back to the team and just get clarification on that. In terms of the planning fees, you're absolutely right, or Councillor Nish is absolutely correct, Chair, that the previous government, I think it was in December, increased the fees and charges, which did help with income. And as I said earlier in my remarks during the State of the District debate, the pre-app service is also generating a lot of income for the council. Off the top of my head, I probably can't give you a direct answer about ring fencing that money, but I'll come back to you. I'll be glad to in writing.
Through you, Chair, thank you very much for that. And I'm sure you got the evils from the chief.
Thank you, members. Moving on to item number 8, workforce strategy and action plan. I'll now may I invite Councillor Davenport-Ray to present the draft strategy and propose the recommendations within the report. Thank you.
Tonight I'm here to talk to you about our employees and to propose that this council adopts a strategy to support their hopes and aspirations. This council could not operate without its people, and I've heard many of us mention them tonight. These are the same people that illustrate the pages of the strategy that I've put before you. Our staff consistently impress me. This year, our leisure centres are the #1 place where local children will learn to swim. 99.9% of bins were collected on schedule in Q4. And as several people have already mentioned, 704 affordable homes were built in Huntingdonshire over the last year. None of this would have happened without our council workforce. The workforce strategy I put before you tonight illustrates a new way of working. 6 months were spent listening to our employees, specifically listening in the early hours, lunch hours, and late hours, listening on-site and online, listening when it suited them. 73% of our staff, that's 472 employees, gave up their valuable time to talk to our organizer, Nick Harpham. If you look at page 9 of the strategy, you'll give a flavor of what our staff told us in the colored bubbles. We found that people's expectations of work are changing. The issues we need to tackle fall roughly into 3 pillars. The first is attraction and retention. We need to be an attractive employer for people who have the skills that we need. The second pillar is engagement. We need clear, transparent, two-way communications with our staff, and we need to praise them when they have success. The third pillar is well-being. Well-being is especially complex, but it includes physical and mental health, a positive and supportive work environment, and financial well-being. Should this council adopt the strategy before you, then the final page of the strategy sets out what would happen next. First, we'd be committing to that transparent two-way communication with our staff. Second, would be investing time and funding into the action plan. So this is the separate document that was attached in the council papers. Now, that time of our staff and their efforts were included in the budget that was approved by this council earlier in the spring. So the taking on of this work has already been included in our finances for the current year. The third next step is that we'd follow the relevant governance procedures to ensure that the strategy and action plan are delivered. That means information coming back through the employment committee consistently. And then the fourth step is about measuring. How are we doing? Are we accomplishing what we think we need to? I bring this strategy to you tonight not just with my personal endorsement. The Employment Committee has followed its development closely. At our last committee meeting, we agreed to propose that the Council adopt the strategy separate from the action plan. This leaves the action plan space for refinement and for input from members. Each political group at this council has a representative on the Employment Committee. And as you read that action plan, I encourage you to share your feedback through your member on the Employment Committee. Beyond endorsement by the Employment Committee, I would not be presenting this to you for adoption without positive feedback from our staff. I've had conversations with union reps, employee reps, and staff that I encounter while they're in action. Employees that I catch doing everything from cutting grass and planting trees to serving snacks and crunching numbers, their feedback is consistently positive. As our chief executive explains in the introduction to the strategy, our aim is to build a workforce with opportunities for development and growth, where every staff member feels valued, included, and appropriately rewarded. Therefore, I put before you this workforce strategy for our council, and I hope that we can unanimously support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder, please? Councillor Wakeford, thank you. I will now throw the recommendation out for debate. Thank you. Stephen. Councillor Corley.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you. Obviously, as a member of the Employment Committee, I had the opportunity to look at this strategy in great detail and again concur with my colleague that this is a really good piece of work, which we in the committee were very supportive of. A lot of work has gone into this, and we were really glad to hear the feedback from our employees. I'm glad also that we came to the conclusion that we would accept the strategy separate to the action plan, because the action plan is very ambitious, and that's not to say that it's not achievable, but we're at this stage it's very vague as to when a lot of this will get done. We roughly know how long things might take, and I'm glad to hear that we've already got some budget set aside this year to make a start on that. I suspect it's going to take more than 1 year's budget ultimately to make that happen, but you can rest assured that I will support that approach, because I think it's great that we are investing time and staff. The only thing that I would raise as two notes of caution, which I've since become aware of in having read the peer review, we have raised staff expectations, and that is obvious from the responses we've seen and from the engagement that you've described. I would urge us, therefore, to make sure that we respond and implement as quickly as we possibly can to not let those expectations die in the vine, as it were. Also, in the peer review, they do raise concerns about the likely financial impact of the pay and remuneration reviews that comes as part of the strategy. Again, I would urge us to think carefully about how we make that happen, because I'd hate for our employees to feel that they had put a lot of effort into this and the expectation that things would change and that we're unable to do that. So again, I'd encourage the Joint Administration to make sure when they come to look at budgeting that these things are seriously concerned. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gray.
Thank you very much, Chair. Just 2 points from me. The first is I'd quite like to kind of clear up sort of constitutionally where responsibility for all of this lies. So I think it's very admirable that you've been appointed as a cabinet member to look after staff, the staffing functions of the council. But it's pretty clear in the Constitution that overall corporate management and strategic responsibility for management for all officers lies with Michelle. So I just want to be really clear when you talk about I'm talking to unions and I'm talking to staff and presenting strategies like this, that you're doing that from a point of view of as a champion on behalf of the council the councillors, the 52 of us that are here, and that we've got really clear understanding as a council that the head of paid service is sitting over there. She's responsible for the strategic element of it. Her name appears on the top of that document there, and she's accountable for all of those aspects of it. And I think I really like the passion. I'm not saying that in a patronising way at all. The passion that you're displaying, because I feel it too. Really important that we invest in our staff, we encourage staff, we have a place where people feel that they're fulfilled, and there's talent development and all the other things that are in there. But I do think it's important that we're really clear as a council about where democratically responsibility for our staff lies. That's my first point. My second point, I would echo everything Councillor Corley has just said. On the plan going forward, when I too read the peer review, one of the suggestions in there is about an annual staff survey. And I can't see in the action plan that we've got going forward any reference to a survey. And I think that would be a good thing to consider putting in there. I think getting an annual pulse check of how people are feeling, how engaged staff are, and I think engagement is the word that I would be looking for here. How engaged they are is something that really important. The sooner we get onto that, the sooner we've got a baseline to work from. But I may have missed it, and if I have, please correct me.
Thank you. Councillor Martin. Oh, yes. Come back.
So there were a couple of questions in there. I'll try to remember them all. First of all, you're right. There's a very important distinction between policy and operations. Our chief exec is the head of paid service, and that means operations. But in terms of thinking about a strategic direction, that is the role of your cabinet members. And it would be remiss of me to bring a strategy before you without having gauged the opinions of the staff representatives. So you're right, there's a very distinct separation of roles and responsibilities. But to be honest, I think we're all accountable for, in this chamber and our CEO, for looking after the welfare of our staff. I take a particular interest in that because I'm the cabinet member for employment, but I think it's important that your political leaders do. In terms of the survey, I thought there was one in the action plan. If there isn't, then that is the first thing I will add. In fact, we've talked about an annual survey. Should we perhaps actually be doing surveys much more frequently than that, but just much shorter, so that we can more quickly gauge if there are issues that need to be addressed? So those are certainly things that we're looking into.
Thank you, Councillor Martin.
Thank you very much, Chair, and echo the words from both of my colleagues so far. For me, this is a piece of work that was very much needed, not just for today, but also for tomorrow, for a month's time, a year's time, 5 years' time, 10 years' time. And I'm sure that this council will continue to update this as we go along. And in particular, we've now got, as I said before, we've got a new Labour government. And just today in the King's speech, it was announced there's going to be a new employment rights bill. We don't know exactly what that's going to contain. We've got a few ideas. We know that there's probably going to be an end of flexible working in the way that it currently works, potentially with 0 hours contracts and things like that's been looked into from what the briefing I've been told. And also we're saying that flexible working is going to be the default compared to how it was before. So I think when we start to get the more detail on those new proposals and the bill, I think it'd be good for this strategy to come back to us, not just the Employment Committee, but potentially even to full council, so we can discuss this even more, because this is important for the whole council. We said in the State of District Address, everyone's in agreement that our staff are so important to this district, to every resident as well as every member in this chamber. So if we can reiterate this positively, working together, then it's going to be the benefit of the council over the next 5, 10, 15 years. Now, just raising, obviously, we do need to manage expectations. A lot of the what-ifs may work in a place strategy, but sometimes when it comes to working with our employees, we've got to be realistic, as well as saying, yes, it's good to know what you would like to see in the what-ifs, but just that managing expectation is going to be a key thing over the coming months. But the peer review also mentioned that this needs to be implemented at pace. And I know that's going to be difficult to do. In the peer review, it does say that we have got the resources to move around as we see to prioritise. So I hope that this can get some extra resources to be prioritised. But there's some of the action points where I'm a bit concerned that the length of time that you set yourself may be too long. And I think there's some that are too short to get it done properly and correctly the first time round, but some of them are a bit long. And the one that stands out for me is the EVP, which I'm going to remind myself stands for Employee Value Proposition. We're saying 3 to 5 years. Well, in 3 to 5 years, we've lost a whole generation of potential employees that we could be attracting into this authority, and members of staff that we could be training up, and that could be the stalwarts within this district, really guiding us along. So if we could really prioritise things like that to get these proposals, these propositions forwards and out there sooner rather than later, we're going to have iterations of things like the EVP. We know that's going to happen, but 3 to 5 years, I think, is too far down the line for something that we need ASAP.
Would you like to respond?
So the documents before you, there's a strategy and there's an action plan. So what I've put before you this evening is the adoption of the strategy. And I very much agree that the action plan is going to need tailoring and updating and to be able to be flexible. And so I hope you would be able to support the adoption of the strategy on its own.
Councillor Conboy.
Thank you, Chair. Well, considering we didn't rehearse these questions, so I didn't know what was going to come from any of my colleagues, I think actually it's really helpful because it builds on the same theme. So we have before us tonight a strategy for which I'm really grateful. I'm really pleased that the volume of staff that have taken the time to be engaged in this and given so generously of their opinions, and equally are giving positive feedback that what they see in what we're trying to achieve is things that they welcome and recognise from that contribution. So that's really, really positive. The bit for this council then to consider is we will shortly, bizarrely, though it's only July, we will be entering a budget setting session yet again, because of course, as you know, we have to start early. I, on your behalf, received a letter from the new Deputy Prime Minister 2 days ago, setting out her desire to celebrate the value that we give in local government. It was a very personally written letter. You know, you could hear the personality and you could hear the strength of feeling in that writing, which is not normal from a letter from somebody who holds that sort of office. But it was very welcome. And I very much look forward to, I hope, being able to come back to you and say that we have slightly more financial certainty with a slightly longer budget view. That would help us as a council. But one of our real challenges will be to look then at our financial position and to make some of those decisions that of all the things that are urgent and important. We know our staff are our biggest, most important asset, but it's also quite resource intensive. So this is going to be one of the challenges. So I'm really pleased to hear from across the chamber a desire to move at pace, a recognition that this might take some investment. And I think one of our challenges is our ambitions will have to manage within the reserve and the pot that we have, our total budget. But I think what I hope our staff are hearing is there's a desire from the chamber not to step into the chief executive's territory as head of paid service leading her team, but to support the decisions that need to be taken for our staff and to recognise the importance of investing in them. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Conboy. Councillor Hodgson-Jones, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to pick up on one area of the strategy, which I feel could go a lot further than it does, and which would go a long way towards improving not just the sense of well-being of staff, but the sense of value for staff. And that's in the area of engagement, where you talk about communication and you talk about messages being heard. And then on the next page, we talk about future ways of working and the need to adapt ourselves. Well, I think it's very important that if we are looking to be an agile and nimble council moving forward and adapting ourselves to different ways of doing things, whether that be a simple task or something major, it's very important that the staff are fully involved in that and engaged in that and are empowered to bring forward their own ideas on how things could be done differently, how things could be improved, and what works best in their specific area. And I'd like to see that properly recognised in the strategy, which at the moment it is not. Thank you.
Councillor Davenport-Ray, would you like to respond?
Since I joined the council in May 2022, I have been consistently impressed by the ideas and the ingenuity of the officers that I interact with. There are many cases where some of the most promising and forward-thinking actions that we have taken have come directly from staff. If I think about our motto of do, enable, and influence, that came from a member of staff in the open spaces team. So I completely agree. They are sometimes where the best ideas come from. They certainly have the most experience of how our council operates. And so I completely agree with you, and I'll take that on board.
Thank you. I would now like to take a vote. We have a proposal and we have a seconder in Councillor Sam Wakeford. Could I have a show of hands for all those in favour of the recommendation? Thank you. That looks pretty unanimous to me. Thank you. Moving on to item number 9, the Local Government Association Corporate Peer Challenge. I would now like to invite our Chief Executive, Michelle, to present the Local Government Association Corporate Peer Challenge. This was marked to follow on the agendas, and paper copies have been provided for those of you who have requested paper copies of the agenda. Thank you. Michelle, can I have a... So yes, carry on. Thank you, Michelle. Would you like to start? Yeah.
There we go. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
And thank you, everybody. And again, I apologise for the report being late. I was, as some of you will know, waiting on the final version to come through. So I appreciate you. It's not you've not had your 5 clear days, but you've had that over the weekend, and clearly some of you have been able to read that from the comments tonight. The purpose tonight is for us to receive. I've referenced in the report that we will have an action plan be presented to October's performance overview and scrutiny committee. But I think just picking up, if I may, on some of the points in relation to the previous item, have it linked to workforce strategy because of the recommendation 5 within the peer recommendations. Having an action plan that will come to overview and scrutiny in October doesn't mean work is not already underway in respect of delivering against some of these recommendations. And if I may, just cross-referencing the workforce strategy, stepping into my role as head of paid service there, I think the points made around that were really reiterated within the recommendation, and it was something the peers were really clear on, and it's something that I'm very clear on in terms of the level of engagement that we had from our staff and the positivity that came through. I do not want us to lose that momentum and have staff then feel disengaged because it's not happened at pace. So just as an example on that, and as I forgive me because I'm straying back into the previous item, the conversations that I've had with our strategic HR manager were how to accelerate the resource that we have budgeted. So rather than deliver, have 1 post supporting that, we've accelerated that and had 2 posts come in to really keep the pace up and able to start to demonstrate to our workforce that we do intend to deliver against those recommendations and specifically around the workforce strategy. And I think, if I may, I'd also like to thank you all. What has been a very, very common theme tonight is your complete appreciation of the workforce in terms of delivering what this council collectively aspires to deliver to the community. And what we do know from the workforce strategy is that feeling valued is really important to our workforce. So in my Friday email that I send to all of our staff, and again does get printed out for those who don't have access to email, just to make sure everyone can access it, I will be certainly referencing how that feeling has come from all of you today, in fact, to the value that our workforce bring. And I can also include a photo of you all as well, because Michael has kindly done that for me, so I can actually send a photo of you all in council. So sorry, you've indulged me, Chair, to stray into the previous item. Coming back to the recommendations here, in terms of the way forward, as I say, they will be presented to October scrutiny. There is a lead officer from SLT and a lead cabinet member for each recommendation, so there is accountability, again coming back to our core values. If we're going to have these, we must demonstrate accountability and the ability to deliver against those. I think many things to reflect. The recommendations are positive. I haven't referenced other councils because sometimes that looks bad form. But if you do choose to look at the Local Government Association website and Google corporate peer challenge, and particularly the 2024 reports that are coming through, because that is under the new framework of challenge as opposed to review. Again, linked to the offlog work that's been undertaken by government, the LGA, for want of a better expression, beefed up the previous peer review process. So the actual peer challenge is, whilst not an inspection, and great pains to say not an inspection, they are clearly looking far more deeply and making recommendations that previously they may not have. So please do have a look at some of those recommendations that other councils are seeing, and I think it will give you a good benchmark to see where we have come out. So I as your chief executive, feel very positive around the recommendations that we've received. I've also referenced some with peppered throughout the report. You will have noted there are other recommendations that don't make the final cut as the key recommendations, but clearly are actions that we need to start to implement as well, and they will be captured for completeness and transparency. And then finally, I think it would have been remiss if I hadn't referenced some of the really positive feedback that the peer review team shared. And one of the overarching ones was just how welcoming, honest and transparent everybody they met through that process. And that includes all of you who took part in those focus groups. And I think what was really, I was very clear. I wanted Eastfield House and One Leisure to feel part of that review team, and they did not feel that it's just the corporate centre. That can sometimes be a challenge for us. And we had some really good feedback from those members of staff who were able to show, and again, feel proud to be able to show the peers around workspace that isn't always sometimes where peers will get to see. And we made a real conscious effort to make sure that the tour did include Eastfield and One Leisure. Specifically, I wanted them to look at the workshop down at Eastfield, because those of us that have had the opportunity to see that know just how fantastic that workshop actually is in terms of the team that make that a very good workshop. So I think in terms of that, that's where the report is, and it's really a report for us to receive. And obviously happy to take questions, but if anyone would like to talk to me separately, always happy to have one-to-ones with you, as you all know. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Michelle. May I have a proposer, please? Thank you, Councillor Conboy, and a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Sanderson. I will now open up the debate to the floor for discussion. Thank you. Councillor Conboy.
Thank you, Chair. I will be very brief because I think we will have lots of opportunities. Obviously, tonight we're simply receiving the report, and we're going to have lots of opportunities to discuss it in our various formats. But I wanted to say thank you to the peers that came to visit. They were fantastic people to meet and very inspirational in terms of what they had to share with us. I certainly found the experience a very positive one and a very thought-provoking one. I very much look forward to having the opportunity to work across council to look at how we reflect back then on those suggestions and recommendations, and I look forward to taking that work forward. Thank you.
Thank you. In the absence of anybody else wishing to... Oh, sorry. Just couldn't see you. Yeah. Councillor Ross Martin, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'd just like to echo the words that Councillor Ferguson, the Executive Leader, just made around thanking the peer team that came in. The process was very thorough, and I know from the forum that we had for scrutiny, there was no punches held back, but we were very open and honest. And I think that's what we need for a process like this, to ensure that this end report has all the recommendations that we need to move this organisation forward. Obviously, within the report, there's a few things that stand out to me that I know that over the coming months and the next year or so, the administration will work on, and we will definitely be holding you to account on. And things like departments feeling like they're within silos. I know I raised this at scrutiny last week. That is not something that we want for this organisation. I know some departments have a really good working environment. The leadership, and it is leadership, not management, leadership within those teams should be shared. That best practice should be shared across the whole council. So that's something that I think we really do need to act. And I know the workforce strategy is going to be a key part of doing that, as well as the productivity report that came to scrutiny last week. But we do need to see some work on that, because it is key that the whole organisation feels like one, and it's not One Leisure, Eastfield House and Pathfinder House, and then people that work at home. We are one collective organisation. Affordable housing, it's fantastic that we've got, 700 plus affordable housing this year. I know a lot of that would have come through probably because of the timescales on the last administration, and next year we're going to see a dip, and we all know and understand the reasons why for that. But it's concerning if that trend extends into year 2 and year 3. So I think Councillor Sanderson, some more updates as we go along to keep us up to date with where we are on potential pipelines for affordable housing is going to be really important. We've had this discussion over and over again. So if we can touch on that a bit more frequently moving forward over the next 12 months would be very good. Finally, again, just touching on scrutiny. The Scrutiny Forum was very productive, as I said, and I do want to see the work plan progress and move forward. And I had conversations with the Chief Exec today, who's given her commitment as well that we do need more member-led engagement within those scrutiny meetings. So I do urge backbenchers on both sides to really engage with this opportunity, because for me, it does feel like an opportunity that we didn't have before to really push forward and bring forward ideas and policies and areas that maybe we all specialise in different areas. Let's push those forward, because without that work, without that plan, we're not going to be telling Cabinet what we want. It's just going to be them dictating to us the whole time. So it's good that this is in the report. I look forward to seeing that being followed through by the Chief Exec, officers and the Cabinet, just urging people to really get involved with that at scrutiny. Otherwise, I look forward to this coming through with the plan of action in the next round of overview and scrutiny, and seeing regular reports coming back to us, letting us know how we're getting on, because that is really, really important for all of us to report back to our residents that we are getting value for money, and that this report hasn't been done for no reason. This needs to be a key part of us moving forward in the next 12 months. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Martin. Councillor Niche.
Thank you, Chair, for noticing. First of all, might I say, add my congratulations. I think peer challenges are really difficult. Having been a part of a peer review team in the past, and also on the receiving end, I know which side I prefer to be on. Although, surprisingly, a peer review team do an awful lot of work as well. But I know it's a very challenging thing, as it says there, to be on the receiving end of it, because you never know what's going to come out, although they are there to help. And I think this is where this has come through. This has really shown areas which we need to look at, and it will be very positive. I mean, I will say the best bit I read, I think it's saying that HDC, as we've mentioned before, and I haven't read it all because I didn't listen, but it says, peers found that HDC are a well-resourced council with the ability to make choices around how they deliver resources, their services. Peers noticed some difficulty decisions were made around garden waste, yes, understatement I think, which has helped balance the budget this year. The only thing I would argue is, I'm not sure it was there to balance the budget this year, but that's the way the peers were advised. So, but I think it was overall, I think it's a really good, positive thing, and will really go on to help all of us from a district perspective, and also especially as a new chief executive, to understand quite quickly where some of the areas of challenge may be.
Thank you, Councillor Niche. Councillor Wakeford.
Thank you. I'd certainly like to echo the leaders and the Chief Exec's thanks to the peers that we had for the report. The review, despite the way Councillor Niche made it sound, it might be potentially, I thought it went very, very smoothly and was very friendly, albeit with perhaps punches swung politely, as Councillor Martin suggested. As we talked about it, with reference to a different corporate peer challenge report recently, clearly were every single element of feedback to be 100% positive, that would be much more worrying than a warts and all report that actually gets under the skin. So I think we certainly find this helpful, and the work, as Councillor Comboy indicated, has begun already. We're not awaiting committee panels. Councillor Martin made reference, I think, for the second time this evening about affordable housing and the suggestion of, should we say, shared credit. I didn't rise to it the first time. I will this time, if I may. I think we all recognise the length of work and complex market forces, among other things, including hard work by council officers, building and maintaining relationships, and making connections between providers that results in the particular delivery of housing and affordable housing in any given year. But the reason the peer reviewers commented so positively about how impressed they were about our delivery of affordable housing is precisely because in many authorities delivery has gone down, not up, especially since the disaster of the mini budget that I won't elaborate upon, whereas we've managed to increase as well. And there are clearly many factors. It's not all luck, but it's not no luck. It's not all an inheritance from the previous administration, but it's certainly not none either. So I think there's ongoing good work that I hope he'd agree with me that, as I say, the corporate peer reviewers identified there in terms of our record performance on that one point.
Thank you, Councillor Wakeford. I'd now like to have a vote. All in favour by show of hands, please. Thank you much. Good. That looks very unanimous. Thank you. Before we move on to the next item, we're going to have a 5-minute comfort break. Thank you. Thank you. We now move on to item number 10, the annual report of the Corporate Governance Committee 22-23. Councillor Burke, can I invite you to present the annual report of the Corporate Governance Committee? And in doing so, I would be grateful if you would update us verbally on the deliberations of the committee at the meeting on the 9th of July 2024 on this item. Thank you. Councillor Burke.
Thank you, Chair. It's very odd saying that. This evening, I am pleased to present the annual report of the Corporate Governance Committee for the period of 22-23. You have the statement within the agenda packs, and I'm being very optimistic by saying you will have all read it this evening. So you'll be pleased to know that I'm not going to stand here and read it out word for word, particularly as the chair in me is looking at the time and it says on our agendas 5 minutes. The report was considered by the Corporate Governance Committee at our meeting on the 9th of July, where we also looked at the LGA review and the actions from that. And I just wanted to say, very briefly, it's really lovely to see that from the report of last year, out of the 17 actions, there are a number of those that have been completed. And it's very refreshing to know that with our new audit manager in post, a lot of work is being done behind the scenes so that we will have a completed matrix. The 5 actions that we have for this year, the first of those is to make sure that we have last year's completed. And again, we have had reassurances that there is a lot of work happening behind the scenes. So I'd like to thank officers, particularly our new audit manager, for being so on the ball so early into post and cracking on with that. The report was written by our outgoing chair, Councillor Wells, and I want to take this opportunity to thank him and Councillor Harvey for their support and guidance during the handover of the chair and vice chair roles, and also acknowledging the support that we're going to continue to have from Councillor Harvey in her new role of Executive Councillor for Governance and Democratic Services. So thank you. I am happy to take questions.
Would anybody like to pose a question? No? In that case, may I have a proposer and a seconder to receive? Thank you. That's Councillor Conboy and Councillor Sanderson. Can I have a show of hands just to say, are we all in favour, please? Thank you. That's good to see. Yeah, all in favour. Thank you very much. We'll now move on. To item number 11, the Treasury Management Outturn Report for 2023-24. Turning to pages 61 of your agenda, may I invite Executive Councillor for Finance and Resources to present the outturn in respect of Treasury management activity, including investment and borrowing activity and Treasury performance. Councillor Mickleborough, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, everyone. As a council, we have adopted the CIPFA Code of Practice for Treasury Management, which mandates semi-annual and annual reports that set out our Treasury performance and other key indicators for the financial year. Tonight, I'm presenting the annual Treasury Management Outturn Performance Review for 23-24. The published report covers the period between the 1st of April 2023 and 31st of March 2024. This Treasury Management Strategy was approved on the 22nd of February 2023. Treasury Management is the management of our borrowing, investments and cash flows, banking, money market and capital market transactions, the effective control of the risks associated with those activities, and the pursuit of optimum performance consistent with those risks. The overall aim is to support the Council's financial health and to contribute to the effective delivery of its services and strategic goals. There's a lot of information in the report, and over time we've been attempting to improve the level of commentary to make it more accessible. But despite this, finance and particularly Treasury management isn't exactly the easiest of topics for people to understand. Despite Councillor Burke encouraging me to do so, there isn't time to recount the entire report this evening. And in fact, I didn't even finish my cup of tea, which is most disappointing. So what I will do is summarise the key items of importance in the order that they are found in the report. The first area is economic review. It is important to remember that we are reviewing to the end of March of this year. If you think back to the last financial year, it was quite difficult to work out where the UK was in terms of economic position. We had seen a shallow recession while inflation was falling, but we were not seeing interest rates changing. In fact, mortgage rates for homeowners had crept upwards. Consumer spending was not recovering, but official unemployment was low, and there were a lot of job vacancies. The published report uses the phrase, "A looser labour market is bearing down on inflationary pressures." In plain English, this meant that the pay rates of those advertised jobs were actually lower than the rates advertised for the same job in the previous couple of years. Consumer disposable income was down on previous years, which made people feel poorer, yet the FTSE 100 of UK leading shares was close to its all-time high. In the USA, inflation had fallen further and faster, with a similar story in the Eurozone. Despite optimistic predictions, however, there were no changes in bank base rates in these areas either. The second item of key importance is the performance of council funds. Table 2 in Appendix A of the Treasury Management Report shows the balance sheet summary of our capital funding requirement. You may recall I mentioned the capital financing requirement at the last report and how it represents the total amount of capital expenditure that has not yet been financed by grants, contributions, or the council's own resources, and how it measures the council's underlying need to borrow for capital purposes. Our borrowing is shown in tables 3 to 6. I'm bringing this up again as earlier in the year there was a flurry of interest in the amount of money borrowed by local councillors or councils, brought about by a national newspaper article. This meant that the topic was brought up in our own local press and also on various social media discussions in groups in our area. People were confused by our £34 million of debt and how this was possible with our published budgetary requirement figure of £24 million. At previous budget statements, I have complained about how confusing it is that we are required to report our numbers focused on that £24 million figure, rather than our overall annual turnover of £82 million. People had a range of opinions on our debt level, including that councils should not run any debt at all. The key element of reassurance for members is that our debt of £34 million is a long way behind our commercial property investment estimated value of around £40 million, or the amount including the legacy property portfolio that then totals £70 million, although not all of our £34 million worth of debt is directly related to commercial property investment. These are big numbers. If you bring it into more simple terms and think about it from a household finance point of view, it's a bit like having a mortgage of £220,000 on a house worth about £500,000, and being able to service that comfortably when the household income more than covers the debt interest repayments. Council is not allowed to borrow to finance operational activities, so the analogy used by some of maxing out the credit card just was not accurate. That said, we have added no new borrowing in the reporting period, and we do not anticipate borrowing in the near term. Our investments achieved a weighted interest rate of 5.22%. We have diversified our investments to a balanced risk and return, maintaining a robust portfolio. These are shown in Table 6 of Appendix A. As you can see, a large proportion of our investments were made in the Government's Debt Management Office, or DMO. which is an agency of the UK Treasury. The DMO's primary role is to manage the UK's debt and cash needs at government level, ensuring that public borrowing requirements are met cost effectively. Funds that are placed into the DMO are used to reduce the need for the government to borrow. Therefore, investing here helps reduce costs for the public sector overall and stops external money market funds from making gains at the taxpayer's expense. The rates have remained very comparable with money market fund rates, which reflects the government's current need to borrow. One of the three main purposes of Treasury management is to invest surplus funds in a manner that balances low risk of default by the borrower with a fair rate of interest and prioritising liquidity before considering optimising investment returns. With that in mind, it is considered that the DMO is the best place for current investments under the criteria of security, liquidity and yield. I've previously talked about our need for a commercial investment fund strategic review. It was planned to commence in June. However, the news of Karen Sutton's retirement, added to the successful recruitment of a new Section 151 officer, means that running such an exercise during an interregnum would be unwise. With interest rates remaining high, the risk of losing out on opportunities or financial returns is considerably lower. With the general election now complete and a new government in place, it is also possible that their agenda will open other opportunities to us that weren't possibly or previously on the table. The review will now be planned for late autumn once the new Section 151 officer is in place, unless a significant unexpected opportunity arises. Our third item is Treasury risk management. Both the SIPFA Code and government guidance require the Council to invest its funds prudently, as I have previously mentioned. The Council's objective when investing money is to strike that appropriate balance. The previous mentioned 5.22% return against the Bank of England base rate of 5.25% is evidence of well-balanced financial risk and return management, and I would like to thank those who have worked to achieve this result. The fourth item is non-Treasury investments. We hold £70.8 million of non-Treasury investments in the form of directly owned property, totalling £70.7 million, and non-activated shareholding in a subsidiary totalling £100,000. These investments generated 3.92 million of investment income in 23-24, a decrease of 37% on the £5.36 million figure from 2022-23. This is a yield of 5.55% compared to 7.58% in the previous year. This is due to reduced rents collected from Fareham, Stonehill and the Rowley Arts Centre. Due to the tenant moving out, it was decided to perform a complete refurbishment at Fareham, during which time we could not receive rental income. This work is now complete and there is good interest in the refreshed building. The Rowley Arts Centre has been rather bedevilled by national chains entering CVA arrangements and the restrictions that this places on us as a landlord. There has been interest in the unit during the reporting period, but the options on the table have not been acceptable. And despite some opinions, it is not good practice just to accept an offer because it is present. Further information on the latest updates for this financial year will be shared with members in a closed session of overview and scrutiny in September. The penultimate item is compliance. The Chief Finance Officer, or Section 151 officer, reports that all Treasury management activities undertaken during the financial year complied fully with the SIPFA Code of Practice and the Council's approved Treasury management strategy. In section 2.4, you will find the comment that the government has extended the mandatory statutory override for local authorities to reverse out all unrealised fair value movements resulting from pooled investments to the 31st of March 2025. In English, the government has extended the rule that allows local authorities to ignore or not write down on the main books gains or losses from pooled investment funds until March 2025. Instead, these are then recorded in a separate reserve. This is important to us because the £4 million invested in the CCLA property fund fall into that category, and that is why it needs to be communicated. Finally, our Treasury management indicators. We measure and manage our exposure to Treasury management risks using the indicators of security, liquidity, exposure to interest rate risk, structure of borrowing, maturity timing, and long-term investments. As you can reference in the report, we have complied with all of these indicators, which have changed little over the previous year. Finally, taking a comment that was made in overview and scrutiny about the indicated loan-to value shown in Table 17 regarding the commercial investment properties, I've mentioned these numbers earlier in a more holistic context and consider that they offer no cause for concern. It is important to remember that commercial property investment is a long-term strategy, and we have seen a difficult year in this market. The book value of property is set by the rental achieved, and this has been made to look worse by the rental period gaps. There is currently no need to reconsider the status of the existing CIS portfolio due to those book value reasons, as the valuation, or the only valuation that makes any matters, is if we ever chose to sell, which at this point in time we are not planning to do. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Mickleborough. Time is moving on rapidly, so I would ask, are there any brief questions from members, please? Councillor Hodgson-Jones.
Yes, very briefly. The portfolio holder referred to a recession, and he refers to it in his report. Although there was a quarter of negative growth, this country did not suffer 2 consecutive quarters and therefore was not in a recession. There might have been a slowing of growth, but I think one needs to be accurate about these things and consistent. And moreover, we have since seen that growth, albeit slow, is recovering, and the country remains in a period that is more akin to stagnation than shallow recession. But I would like to see us being a little bit more forward-looking in these reports to try and understand more easily what we can do to increase the yield on our investments and how we can manage them actively, given that we have increased the amount of money we have put into very short-term funds. And how we manage, is there a deliberate strategy for managing the tenor of our investments alongside the tenor of our debts? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Would you like to respond, Councillor McBurney?
Yeah, I wasn't expecting questions, which is why I came back over here. Revised GDP data from the Office of National Statistics confirmed the UK entered a technical recession in the final 6 months of last year. The figures showed that, as initially thought, the economy shrank by 0.1% in the 3 months between June and August, followed by a further 0.3% in the final 3 months of 2023. So we did enter a technical, very shallow recession in that sense. In terms of the fund and the choices and optimisation, we do have an interesting balance between the requirement to make sure that we're not taking speculative gambles with taxpayers' money. And I think because we're coming out so close to the Bank of England base rate, we're doing a good job of that. Certainly the commercial investment strategy work will have a look at areas where we may wish to do other things with different levels of risk and certainly different profiles. Personally, and I don't really want to lead the witness, I'd love us to be able to think about some things which are closer to home, that have a higher risk profile, but have a much broader return than just pure financial return. So when we get to that stage towards the autumn of this year, I'd encourage everybody with an interest to join in on those sessions and hope that we can produce a really good strategy.
Thank you, Councillor McElroy. No more questions. The recommendations ask Council to note the contents of the report. So unless anyone has any objection, can I suggest that we now note the report and move on to the next agenda item? Are we all agreed? Right. Thank you. Item number 12, use of special urgency provisions 2023-24. The Council's constitution requires the Executive Leader to submit annual reports to the Council on executive decisions which have been taken during the course of the year under the special urgency proceedings. There have been no executive decisions taken under the special urgency provisions in 2023-24. Are you all happy to note the information? Thank you. Moving on to item number 13, we have a little bit of a change now. Cambridge and Peterborough Combined Authority. The standing item provides an opportunity for District Council members to ask questions and comment on Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Combined Authority issues. Following discussion with group leaders, we are trialling a new system where there will no longer be presentations by lead members, and under this item, there will be an opportunity for questions only. You all have the decision summaries in front of you. Are there any questions? There are no questions. Thank you. Item number 14, outcomes from committees and panels. Now is the opportunity for members to raise any issues or ask questions arising from recent meetings of the Council's committees and panels. Are there any questions, please, on this? No? No. Thank you. The same rules apply in terms of questions as stated previously, but then there are no questions, so thank you. Item number 15, variations to membership of committees and panels. May I invite group leaders to report on any variations to the membership of the committees and panels if necessary. Thank you. Councillor Conboy.
Thank you very much, Chair. It's just to note there is an addition of Councillor Harvey to the Constitution Working Group. Thank you.
Thank you. No one else. Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to be adding Councillor Lowe to Overview and Scrutiny, Environment, Customer and Partnership. And then Councillor Bywater is to come off of licensing and Councillor Clark is to join licensing.
Thank you, Councillor Martin. Thank you. I will now draw the meeting to a close. Thank you.
Well done, Chair. Didn't you want to make any alterations? Didn't you want to make any alterations? A group of one, I'm going to sack myself.
Yeah. Yeah.